Hello everyone, I'm Antoine Attallah. I'm an architect and urban designer living and practicing in Paris, but very much involved in Lebanon as an activist working on different subjects and causes with other members of civil society, other groups, and NGOs. When the revolution started in 2019, I was in Paris and I ended up taking a leave of 3 weeks in order to go to Lebanon and be able to take part in everything that was happening there. So I was able to witness a lot of the things that happened in those very important first weeks of the revolution. And I was able to record videos, to take pictures, to observe also everything that happened there, the way space shifted, the way space was, public spaces in particular, and roads and the squares of downtown Beirut and also a bit of Tripoli were completely reshaped by protesters and many people, and I was able afterwards to use all of this material that I collected on site in order to draw maps, to write articles, to also try to decipher the reasons why things happened spatially in these very specific ways. The geography of the 2019 protests can be analyzed at different scales. The first one is the national scale. As I said earlier, many of the country's regional capitals were involved, from Zghouta and Tripoli to the north, down to Sur and Nabatieh in the south, and then from Beirut and other coastal cities to the Ba'a. And this, in return, means that also all of the country's communities were also involved in the process. When you start zooming in, there is also the importance of protests that happened along and on main communication axes, such as highways and other regional roads. This can be explained by the fact that in a revolution process, you need the existing system to get interrupted, to be stopped, in order to start imagining something new. And when the state of normalcy is unjust, is unfair, and needs to change, then the easiest way to interrupt how the system functions is to interrupt communication routes. It automatically interrupts everything else as a consequence. When you zoom in further into each of the specific places that really gathered much of the protests, such as Beirut and Tripoli, more specifically because these are the places that I went to, you see how existing spaces were completely overturned in terms of function and in terms of dynamics. So in Beirut, many of the parking spaces that are a result of the Solidaire plan that demolished much of the historical center without really rebuilding anything that is appropriable today, those parking spaces really were the canvas on which many new things were imagined. You had spaces for speeches with tribunes. You had spaces for debate where tents of many groups and NGOs were set up in order to house debates, to house discussions, to house maybe the birth of a new way of doing politics. You had streets that were mostly car-driven being turned into pedestrian commercial axes, like a small souk that sold mostly things to eat to much of the protesters that came from all across the country. You even had spaces for fun, for leisure, for party. You had spaces to just sit and stroll with your family. So in the end, in Beirut, this downtown that really was completely sterilized by the Solidaire plan was able to rehouse much of what it had lost from the pre-war period, and even housed new things. It really became again what a city center is supposed to be, which is a place that gathers citizens from all over the city and even from all over the country, rather than the exclusive, dry, and unwelcoming space that it had become since the 90s. So there was really the mere fact of reappropriating space in this way was in itself a revolutionary act, and a way to reshift urban geography in favor of citizens. Lebanon, especially in the post-war period, was very rich in NGOs and very rich in its civil society and its involvement, and this is in big part due to the failures and even absence of the state across many segments of the credentials that the state is supposed to uphold. So the revolutionary events really were able to rest on a very rich ecosystem of alternative political organizations, alternative parties, NGOs, civil society groups that either worked on specific areas of the country or on specific themes such as the environment, social justice, privatization of the coast, etc., etc. So there was really this very fertile ecosystem on which things were able to bloom quite quickly during those events. All of the organizations that happened during the events and after them didn't happen in a vacuum. They really happened on already a very rich terrain. However, something that was very interesting is the fact that these events really made many people that didn't used to talk to each other, well, engage in discussions. When I say this, I mean people from different social backgrounds, from different areas of the countries, from different religious communities as well, being able to really to engage in discussions, to engage in debates that weren't necessarily always resolved and ending on agreements, but that really allowed people to really engage with each other for the first time. And this is really a very new thing, given how long and how strongly the political establishment has tried to cut across and the social fabric of the country, and really made it a point to make people scared from each other and not engaging in creating an actual political, social culture that across society. So this is very significant in these protests, and this is something that was embodied in the spaces of debate that were really established on the grounds. As I said earlier, specific areas of the protest grounds were really dedicated to groups wanting to engage in dialogue, and really a plethora of new groups also emerged from these events, of people that met during these times and that wanted to pursue this act of communication, that wanted to pursue also new political aims. So new parties emerged, new groups emerged, and I really believe that it was really the beginning, and it's still today the beginning of a new political culture, whereas we start talking about issues that really concern citizens in terms of their well-being, in terms of their future, in terms of the services and the comforts that the state is supposed to provide to them. So we start actually talking about issues rather than with being passive witnesses of the bickering of political actors that play the same game over and over across the years and decades. So, and really this was embodied in many new platforms of discussions and debate that happened on the ground that continued after the main revolutionary events, on social media, virtually, and in new spaces that were dedicated to that. So really, I believe that talking about actual issues and the new infrastructure of groups talking to each other through new means is one of the main things that came out of the revolution, and on which we can imagine keep building up in the future.